Hi, I'm Brock Meyer. I want to share a word of encouragement with you this morning. When it comes to serving Jesus, it's more than just church attendance or even just, I believe in God, sort of an approach. We truly believe the scripture when it says that Christ is King. He is not only the King of our lives, the Bible goes even deeper. In the book of Revelation, it says that He's the King of all kings. That means He's the King of all the presidents, senators, governors, mayors, parents, bosses. He is their leader. He's the King of all authority. And when we come to a place where we can fully submit to a Christ that has maximum authority over our lives, it actually is the best place to live. I want to share this thought with you, that the best life is lived under the lordship of Jesus Christ. And the best life is experienced when we submit to the law of God. I have a golden retriever named Wrigley. And when we first got this dog, we took him to obedience school. It was the best 11 weeks of his life. And we do all of these different trainings of submission. And you lay them on their side and you kind of lean over them. You put a hand on their neck and a hand on their hip. And you just sit there for a long time until they know this guy's the alpha. Then you roll them over on their back and their forelegs are sticking up, and you straddle them and you stand over the top. And then you look them right in their eye and you don't move. And you let them know that there's a different alpha that's leading this pack now. And at first, when they're puppies, his eyes are just everywhere and he's just fired up and he just won't look at you. And I actually was doing this with Wrigley today. I'm over the top of him and I'm staring at him, and his response is, he just looks right at me. He's not trying to get away. He's not trying to do something else. He is in complete submission to whatever the master wants to do. Whenever Wrigley doesn't obey, there's consequences for living outside of the law of the master. We have this privacy fence behind our house, and we'll let Wrigley go back there. And there's times when he gets so fired up and so amped up that he doesn't want to stay inside of the confines, inside of the fence that his master has provided for him. So he's figured out how to dig and dig and dig, and he will find a way to get out of the fences of protection that we've put for him. When we live outside of the fences that God has put, His law has put around our lives, it actually brings more pain and hardship. Now he's running around, he can get taken, he can get hit by cars, he can get into some bad food or poison that he shouldn't be eating. But if he stays within the confines and the safety of his master, life will go well for him. Also now he's lost trust. We can't trust him. So now he's on a leash, he's on a long line, he's tied up in the backyard because he has handicapped himself. He has crippled himself because he will not obey. Now what we're working on is when we go for a jog, I've got him on a leash and he'll be running by my side and I'll wear him out. We'll run to the park, we'll run all over the place. And then on our ride home, our run home, I'll take the leash off of him and he'll run right by my side. And there's dogs that are barking. And he just looks over where before he might run and go check everything out. I say, hey, you stay right here. And he'll keep running by my side with no leash on. I want to kind of bring that parallel over. Because whenever the master provides these fences and these boundaries for us, discipline actually brings freedom over the course of time. Wrigley now is free to run and to pad by my side. He's not stuck behind a fence like those other dogs are. I want to encourage us with this thought and this idea. When God puts up boundaries and fences for us, they're not for our harm, but they're really for our good. One of the first fences that He puts up right out of the gate in Scripture, it's Adam and Eve in the garden. And He says, you can eat from any tree that you want, but I'm going to put a fence around one tree, and I don't want you to eat from it. And what do as human nature? Oh, we're going to kick down that fence. I want that tree. You can't tell me I can't have something. I'm an American. I can totally have whatever it is that I want. And I'm afraid that we in the church sometimes approach God the same way, even now, is we'll just kind of blow past the law of God, saying that God is so ancient and we're so progressive. We've evolved, and there should be some new laws. There should be new ways that we approach this thing. There ought to be new ideas on what we should do here. And God says, I've never changed. I'm the same from yesterday, today, and forever. And you need to know that I'm the king over all of life, over law. I'm the king over government. I'm the king over medicine, education, religion, family, your marriage. He reigns and rules. And when we can live inside of those confines, life is so good for us. I want to encourage this thought and this idea. We kind of do this thing today where we just go along to get along, right? And let's just get along with each other so that we can go on down the road. And if it's okay for you, it's okay for you. Just don't hurt anybody. What's good for me is what's good for me. And there's no absolutes. There's no king sitting on his throne saying that this is right and this is wrong. And I would encourage us that if we truly believe that we're Christians, then we would fully submit our lives to Jesus Christ. We would submit to the laws of God. We would submit to the Scripture of God. Recently, we went and took our four-wheelers on a kind of a fun four-wheeler trip. And during that time, I've got one of the four-wheelers strapped down, but I was one strap short. And as I come up on this stoplight, I'm moving pretty quick. And I've got to get into that brake fast. And all the momentum of these four-wheelers starts shifting forward. And we're on the bypass in Marion. And I hear this kaboom, kaboom. I'm like, no, I'm afraid that the trailer ran into the back of my car. I don't know what's happening. And I look over in the rearview mirror and I see a four-wheeler that's flipped over off the trailer, sliding on its top across the bypass. This was the strap that I had used. There ain't much left of this strap. This thing was snapped and it flipped and dropped. And I've got to get out. I grab a hold of that four-wheeler and flip it over. I grab the handlebars that are pressed all the way down on the gas tank and I lift them up. I got to push this thing off the road. I reload it back onto my trailer. Try to get them strapped in with even one more or less strap. And can I tell you that there are really good harnesses. There's really good things that hold our lives together, that bring us life. Because we can get off the tracks. We're like a train just flying off the railroad tracks if we don't have really good borders. And they're called laws, and they're godly laws. And when we want to try to kick over what God says, no, don't do, and we say, yes, we're going to do. When God says this isn't healthy for you, you need to live inside of this way, live underneath the canopy of my blessing, and we say, no, we're going to live outside of that. We're asking for a world of hurt to come crashing down on our lives. The other night I'm watching The Lion King with my daughters. And we see this guy, Simba, who is kind of off on his own now. And he meets a couple buddies, Timon and Pumbaa. And it's nice to have friends, but whenever your only friends are Timon and Pumbaa, and they're just kind of walking around, life is meaningless, singing Hakuna Matata, whatever, we're not going to care about anything. It's nice to have friends, but we need to have an encounter with the King that calls us up to another level, that says you're better than this. There's a higher standard, there's a higher law. And I'm inviting you to live as I live. I'm inviting you to be a king. And the prophet Rafiki comes into his life, and he says, I know your father. And he goes, you knew my father? Simba says, you knew my father? He goes, no, correction. I know your father. And then he jumps to the trees. He goes, come on, he's alive. I'll take you to him. And he's flying through these trees, and Simba's doing everything he can to catch up. And he's alone, and he's abandoned, and he's accused to be a murderer by his family. And he's left out in this jungle, and he's clawing and scratching to try to have this encounter with the king. And he makes it to the little pond. And Rafiki says, look, he lives in the water. So he looks in and he only sees his own reflection. But he says, look harder. And as he looks down, he sees the image and the likeness of the king, Mufasa. And he says, he lives within you. And then the clouds part and the voice of Mufasa comes down. He says, remember who you are. Simba, remember. And I just want to encourage us that if we're followers of Jesus Christ, we've got to know this king. We got to have an encounter with this king. We got to know who we are and who he's called and created us to be, and then live like that, fully embracing all of it, not kicking against it, but saying, yeah, I'm in one accord with who you are and what you've called and created me to be. So can we just say today that he's the King of all kings. He's the Lord of all lords. He's the ruler of all authorities. And as I submit my life under this king, as I fully know him, life gets really, really good. And that's the image that I've been made in. That is the likeness that I've been created in. And so this week, let's be everything we possibly can, living under the lordship of Jesus Christ. And we will truly experience our best lives.